You being dumped the wing peach and honey Samoan tan.
Bro, I walked into a church at midnight looking for God, and I found my pastor doing something that made my blood run cold. I'm not talking about an affair. I'm not talking about stealing money from the offering plate. I'm talking about statues, smoke, and chanting that had absolutely nothing to do with Jesus. And the worst part? This wasn't some random small-town preacher. This was one of the most respected pastors in America. Thousands of followers, sold-out sermons, people crying in the aisles every Sunday because his words hit that deep. And I have it on video. Now, before you scroll away thinking this is clickbait, I need you to stay with me. Because what I'm about to tell you isn't just my story. It's a question that might change the way you see every spiritual leader you've ever trusted. Are they really leading you to God or somewhere else entirely? Stay with me, because this gets darker before it gets clearer. Let me take you back to where this whole thing started, and I need you to understand the headspace I was in, because context matters here. I was carrying something heavy that night. Real heavy. You know that feeling when guilt just parks itself on your chest and refuses to move? When you can't sleep, can't focus, can't even look at yourself in the mirror properly because of something you did or didn't do, and it's just sitting there? That was me. And when people like us get to that point, when the weight gets too much, we do what we were raised to do. We go to the house of God. We find someone who can pray over us, speak truth over us, maybe just hear us without judgment. Because that's what pastors are for, right? That's the whole deal. You carry your broken pieces to them. They help you lay them at the altar, and somehow you walk out feeling lighter. Feeling seen. Feeling like God actually knows your name. I've experienced that. Real, genuine moments in church that I can't explain away. Moments where something shifted in the room, and you just knew something beyond human was present. So that night, I wasn't being naive. I wasn't blindly following. I was genuinely hurting. And I went to the place that had given me real comfort before. I went to church to confess. Now here's what you need to understand about this church. This wasn't your neighborhood chapel with 30 members and a donated piano that's slightly out of tune. This was a big church. Big as in cameras, live streams, thousands of people showing up every single week. The kind of church where the pastor is basically a celebrity. Where people quote his sermons like scripture. Where his face is on conference flyers and his name gets mentioned in the same breath as the greats. And the pastor, I'm going to call him Pastor Vicky. This man had presence. Tall, powerful, the kind of voice that fills a room without a microphone. When he spoke, people wept. People fell to their knees. People made life-changing decisions right there in the aisles. He wasn't performing either. Or at least, that's what it looked like. That's what we all believed. His congregation didn't just respect him. They trusted him with everything. Their marriages, their finances, their deepest secrets, their children's futures. He was the spiritual father of thousands of people who believed, genuinely believed, that this man walked closely with God. I was one of those people. That's important. Remember that. So I walk into the church. Late. Later than I normally would have gone, but that's where my headspace was. I just needed to get there. The main hall is quiet. A few lights on. That kind of dim golden glow that churches have at night that somehow still feels holy even when it's empty. I look around for Pastor Vicky. He's not there. I ask one of the staff members. They haven't seen him. Another person, same answer. I figure maybe he left early. Maybe it's just not my night. Maybe I'll come back tomorrow. And then I smell it. Smoke. Not like something burning electrically. Not that sharp metallic smell of a short circuit. This was different. Thicker. Almost sweet. The way incense gets when it's been burning for a while in a closed space. And it was coming from down the hall, from behind a door I'd never really paid attention to before. Now look, in that moment, my brain said, check it out. Not because I suspected anything, just because smoke in a church building late at night is the kind of thing you investigate. Could be a fire hazard, could be nothing. But you check. So I walked toward the door. I pushed it open. And I want you to stop right here with me for a second. Because what I'm about to describe, I've replayed it in my head so many times, trying to find another explanation, trying to give it a different meaning, trying to be fair. But every time I come back to the same image, Pastor Vicky was standing in the middle of that room. In his hands, statues, small figures, the kind that have nothing to do with Christian worship. Nothing I'd ever seen in any church context. Ever. And he was chanting. Not praying, because I know what prayer sounds like. Prayer is a conversation. This was a recitation. Low, rhythmic, deliberate. Words that had a pattern to them. The kind of pattern that's designed to call something rather than communicate with someone. The smoke was coming from something burning in front of him as part of whatever this was. He didn't see me come in. Or if he did, he didn't react. I stood there for I don't even know how long. 5 seconds? 20? Time got weird. And then something in me just said, record this. So, I did. And then I left. I didn't sleep that night. Not even close. Because here's the thing that messed with me more than anything else. More than the statues, more than the chanting, more than the smoke. I went back the next day, and Pastor Vicky was completely normal. Warm handshake, big smile, that same magnetic energy that made you feel like God himself was glad to see you. Talking to congregation members, laughing, praying with someone in the corner. Absolutely normal. And that is what broke something in me. Because now I had two images of the same man. Two completely different realities existing in the same person. And I had no idea which one was the real him. Was the daylight version the mask? Or was what I saw the night before the anomaly, some weird thing I'd misread, some cultural practice I didn't understand, some completely explainable thing that my panicked brain had turned into something sinister? I genuinely didn't know. I still don't know for certain. But I have the video, and my gut hasn't changed its answer. Okay, let me step outside my story for a second, because what I experienced, even if you write off every detail as a misunderstanding, it opened a door in my mind to a question that I think a lot of believers are secretly asking, but nobody's saying out loud. How much do we actually know about the people we hand our souls to? Think about it. When you sit in that pew and that pastor speaks, you're trusting a lot. You're trusting that what he's saying lines up with what he actually believes. You're trusting that his private life reflects his public persona. You're trusting that the power he has over your spiritual life, your emotions, sometimes your finances, you're trusting that he's using it for your good. That's a massive amount of trust. And for most pastors, that trust is earned and honored. I really do believe that. But there are documented cases, not rumors, not internet theories, documented cases of pastors and bishops who were running something completely different behind the scenes. A pastor in West Africa ran what his congregation thought was a prayer network. Behind it was a coordinated operation involving occult practitioners across multiple countries. His sermons were real. The transformation his members experienced was real. The other thing was also real. A bishop in Nigeria, his church was built on a foundation that had been ritually consecrated for purposes that had nothing to do with the God the congregation was worshiping. In that building, the people tithing, praying, dedicating their children in that church, they had no idea what was underneath them. There are pastors who use confession as a database. You come to them with your secrets, your affairs, your addictions, your hidden shames, and they pray with you, and they file that information away. Because shame is leverage, and leverage is power. And some people in positions of spiritual authority understand that better than their congregations ever will. None of this is impossible. None of it is even rare. It happens because of the trust, not in spite of it. When you're above suspicion, you can operate in the shadows indefinitely. So what do we do with this? Do we stop going to church? Stop trusting pastors? Build walls around our faith and go it completely alone? No, that's not the answer either. Here's what I actually think, and this is the thing I wish someone had told me years ago. Your relationship with God was never supposed to have a middleman. That doesn't mean community doesn't matter. It doesn't mean spiritual mentorship isn't valuable. It doesn't mean you stop sitting under good teaching. It means this: the wire between you and God runs directly. It always has. Nobody else holds that connection. Nobody else controls that access. And the moment you let another human being become so central to your faith that if they fell, you'd fall, you've given them something that was never theirs to have. A real shepherd points you toward God and then gets out of the way. A wolf in shepherd's clothing keeps positioning himself between you and God, because that position is where the power is. Learn to tell the difference, not with cynicism, not with paranoia, but with open eyes and your own working conscience, that quiet thing inside you that still knows truth when it hears it. Jesus wasn't subtle about this. He said, "Many will come in my name," not strangers. Not obvious villains. People who would show up, dressed for the role, speaking the language, moving in the circles, and leading people somewhere God never sent them. Stay awake. I still think about that night. I probably always will. And I'll be honest with you, I don't have a clean resolution to give you. I can't tell you definitively what Pastor Vicky was doing in that room. I can't tell you whether what I saw was spiritual warfare, cultural practice, deliberate deception, or something my anxious mind stitched together in low light and smoke. What I can tell you is this: it made me more awake, more discerning, more committed to having a faith that doesn't depend on any single human being staying on the right side of things. And maybe that's the point. Maybe some of the most important lessons about God come from the moments when the people who were supposed to represent Him didn't. That's my story. Those are my questions. Now I want yours. Have you ever experienced something with a pastor or spiritual leader that shook your trust? Something that made you question what was really going on behind the sermons and the smiles? Drop it below. Real talk only. I read every single comment. And if this video made you think, share it. Because somebody in your circle is sitting with this exact question and they don't have the words yet. Subscribe. Hit the bell. We keep it honest here. I'll see you in the next one.